Thank you. So we'll present, we're a studio from Luxembourg, present in a very superficial way our first project, house project ever built. It's called Hercule, out of the reason from a sportsman coming from that street and being very strong. We're based in Luxembourg, so it's maybe first interesting to show a bit of the context. The Luxembourgish context in terms of housing is really dominated by a suburban built culture. And the Luxembourgish dream, in a way, is what you see on the left and the right. What we are interested in is the friction between what we see in the back, which is a commercial center, and in a way, the honesty, but also the spatial capacity of the friction between both. So in the housing projects we try to, in a way, forget about the left and right, or do a merge between the three situations you see there. The other thing in terms of context you have to understand in Luxembourg, which is maybe strange, is that the cost for housing in Luxembourg, which you see here, is much more expensive than France, Germany, or all the countries around, which has an extreme pressure on people coming or living in Luxembourg, and especially young people trying to live there. The other thing is, if you look at the rent, so the monthly rent of Luxembourg, is towns you've never heard of in Luxembourg, like Esch or Differdange, are more expensive than, say, Barcelona or Rome, which is, of course, ridiculous. But this is what sets the context of housing in Luxembourg. These are three auto pictures of the three houses we have built in 11 years. You see that they are either very rural, extremely suburban, or like a very mix between everything, but there's no real urban culture in both. What is interesting to say is, on the three houses we built, all three plots have been inherited. So from the parents or the grandparents, none of the couples we built for our clients have ever bought or been able to build or to buy their plot. And so by saving this money, they were able to build basically a house. Otherwise, it's strictly impossible for the clients we have. These are the three houses we built on those plots. What we try to do is to find a kind of essential architectural language that is strictly about space and not decoration or finishing layers, and tries to, in a way, negotiate a new context between what is already there. You understand that it's either very traditional, very suburban, or very rural in a way. And today we present Hercule, the first house we'll ever build. This is the plot they inherited from the mother living here. You understand that the plot is slightly in a slope and in a perfect green condition, but it's one of the last plots you can find like that in this area. You see our two architects and the two clients. The strategy here was, instead of building a fat house on the whole plot, because the plot was quite narrow and the building regulations are extremely strict, so you need to take a setback left and right, front and back, and then you have 1.5 level you can build. And by definition, then you would get an extremely fat house. The strategy here was to say, where we sink the main part of the house underground in the slope, so that only a smaller part can sit on the landscape. And then we would do so by cutting out on a very strategic plot, in a way, this kind of oasis-like condition where we sink underground the living room. Well, since this is an architecture lecture, we thought of showing some plans. The street is going left on the right side, where you enter or you go down a slope, and you enter either by the obligatory 2 cars in Luxembourg, or by pedestrian here, where you have the wardrobe and a small technical space. We have an integrated desk where we go then into the main living area with the kitchen and the living itself, that can then fully open up to this patio and double to this patio conditions. And in the back, we have the second technical room with that kind of fitness and hobby area. And we then go up to the garden space, where basically you arrive in front of the bathroom that is separated from the master bedroom through the dressing. And then you can still continue up this promenade to the kids' room, which is on the first floor, that have their playroom in the palier condition, and then left and right, quite frontally, the 2 rooms. The most important tool or architectural graphic is for sure the sections. You understand that we sink the whole or the main bulk underground. the cross section in the other direction, and then with this ambition of having really like a small stupid block popping out, and a facade that almost looks like nothing. To the north side, we've punctuated the facade by more frame-like windows that frame landscape elements or become furniture extensions of the rooms. We'll see in the future. And then you understand structurally how this then becomes is that the block that is popping out or sitting on the terrain works as one giant beam bridging the 14-meter patio that opens underground. There were some early sketches or collages done that were quite clearly like let's say the agreed-on manifesto with the clients where we should go to. So this is the south elevation seen from the neighbor. Then the inside space with the living area doubling up into the patio condition seen from the entrance and the garage. And then the rooms which were clearly bidimensional, framing in a very straight manner, one direction, one context, one orientation, and things that didn't make it into execution. Then the other thing of the process that was really important, both for us to work on it, but also in order to negotiate with the city, but also the famous neighbor, which was also the mother or the mother-in-law, and very ugly models that helped us really to find out, is there enough light coming in, is it spatially working, etc., etc. These were the clients when we still had the ambition of building really a monolithical sculpture almost that we could excavate and punch holes through in order to sculpt it. We did mock-ups one-to-one when we still thought we can do this in insulating concrete. Then came a new set of regulations that in a way made it impossible for us in Luxembourg to do that. We would have walls of 1.50 meter width. That's when everything became a bit more complex and we had to deal with this kind of layerings. And the ambition was always to do something as essential as possible, as honest as possible. It was also the first time we had to realize that to do a building that hides, you need to do a big hole. It was quite scary. But in a way, the uncasting of the rough construction was already the spatial quality and the architecture we would find in the end. So this is when you arrive in the street, how the house sits on the landscape. When the portillon opens, you go down the slope into the entrance of the house. What you then see is a lower level with the integrated desk and going up into the living area. This beam we had to, in a way, add during construction because the beams wouldn't last. There were structural problems in construction. And then the living area, as you understand then how it relates to the context by this kind of peripheral wall that really in a frank manner cuts away the mother. But it also frames the rest of the context, and it in a very clear manner is quite honest about how structurally it loads. And then you understand the south facade that is basically a 14-meter beam that opens up the whole living area. And that creates this kind of bastard detailing between maybe like a French culture, German culture, Dutch culture of architecture that maybe we swim in between. So the living area, and then we turn around, you go up the stairs into a quite dark circulation where you arrive on the palier and you understand the landscape frames that go in depth to the quite lush landscape. This kind of conflicts between very honest and minimal materials that combine. The master bathroom, which is basically also there, just an uncasting and then a filter layer to create privacy, and just different element posed on the ground. The uncast shower, the relation between those different elements that were either polished or just integrated. And then going through the dressing into the master bedroom. On top, the kids' bedrooms are really also quite frank and quite frontal to the context. From the same, where we had the chance to design the interior furniture in a very integrated way to optimize the spaces. That integrate also the desk into the windows, etc. And then how the whole thing sits from the north facade with these furniture windows on the slope. This is then how this whole thing more or less tries to integrate or camouflage in the suburban, or the context, this urban or rural context. and how it sits, partly imitates, partly blends in or reflects the context. Thank you.